And today, I'm going to take just 10 minutes to interview Rosan Hall. So, this is her moment in the spotlight. Let's get to know Rosan. So give me a few moments, or a round of applause to welcome up Rosan. So, I've asked Rosan, what are some of the things she wants to talk about today? So, Rosan, first of all, I don't want to brag and make you all jealous, but as gotten to know Rosan over the years, turns out we used to vacation just 20 miles away from each other in Western Iowa. That's right. Yeah. So she's from Nebraska. And what brought you to the South, and in particular this region?
Well, we arrived here through Washington, D.C., Maryland, Kansas City, and then came south to Atlanta. And it was because in Maryland, we met the most wonderful people who my husband worked for at the time. And he owned a construction company, and it was a poured wall company. And so he wanted to start a business down here in Georgia. And we came down here to build up a subdivision off of Shadow Lawn, and we didn't know a thing about what we were going to be doing. So it was all a beginning and a great ending.
That took courage.
It really did. But we had a reason to succeed. We had 4 little kids.
Yeah, sometimes to my detriment, I believe in burning the ships. You burn the bridge, like you're going to commit, right? You got to make it happen. But as I got to know Rosan and realized that, she started a construction company and it still runs today. And that's quite an accomplishment. So what experience so you said you had no experience when you started. Did you find yourself in situations that were overly daunting that you thought, what in the world am I doing?
For sure. When we first started out, we had money, because we were funded by this group in Maryland to begin with. And it worked really well. But unfortunately, over time, we went through what's called a recession. And if any of you are familiar with the building industry, what happens in the building industry, we are the first people in the world to know that a recession's coming, because no one opens a hole in order for them to put in a foundation. And so it happened, and I had to learn how to do a lot of things I'd never done before. So I learned how to do a trial balance. Now, a trial balance is something that is a pretty sophisticated effort that you take to the attorney Anyway, you have to submit it to somebody else who's going to file your taxes on it at the end of the year. So I had never done one before. I had to learn how to do that. And I did it because, being a good detective, I learned it from what had happened before, and I used it to learn what I happened to need in the future. The other thing I learned was I'd never, ever looked at a blueprint the way I had to look at a blueprint. So I learned how to bid and to read a blueprint and determine how much concrete we were going to need, and all of those things that I never had an opportunity to do before because I was a mom. I also learned to believe in myself. And the one thing that I think we often do, as more especially women, we tend to let others tell us who we are. And I had to be very strong for myself, because as I got more and more into the business, my, unfortunately, ex-husband got less and less interested. And so it was helpful to have learned as much as I could. And it was also a little scary.
I think that, I heard someone say that business owners, entrepreneurs, we just breathe different air. And you can say that about any profession. Engineers breathe different air, whatever. But, I think one thing that we share in common is ever so often we have these, oh my God moments, and if I don't respond, bad things will happen, And so you're telling me a little bit about that, how you stepped out there, it took courage, it took faith, and you had no choice but to be successful.
I didn't have a choice, because my goal was to make a business that my children could someday run. And today, our oldest and second oldest young sons are the ones who are running the company. They have expanded it. They now build houses, And they do everything when it comes to like building the house from the top down, roof, everything. And I'm very proud of them because it took a lot of struggles. They've been through the same thing that we went through with recessions and almost lost everything. But they've learned how to manage, save money, learned how to have relationships, which are really, really important at that time.
You know, I had a construction company for a little while that I started, and I'm working on a book called Things I've Accidentally Done Right in My Life. And one thing I accidentally did right is I brought my son into the business. And now he's very successful in the trades. And that was really what worked for him. And so when I heard your story about this, I've got to get Rosan up here to share this story because, you know, look at how well they're doing in a path that is not necessarily put in front of people. So what is the most valuable lesson you think you learned, or did you already share that?
Well, I did somewhat because I learned to believe in myself. Years ago, I went to a retreat in North Carolina, and it was one of the things that they were going to be doing is fire walking. Have any of you ever done that?
No.
I hadn't done it, and I decided I wanted to see what it was all about. So Robbins was the speaker who was handling it all, and went to the seminar and sat through about 2 hours of just conversation. You know, he was preparing you to know how to handle what you were going to do and what it was going to be like. And I got out there, stood in line, and people were leaving in front of me who I guess got up close to 15 feet of coals burning and decided they didn't want to do it. And I just said, you know, I haven't tried this before. If I don't try, I could fail something that I've never tried. So I got up there, I walked my 15 feet flat-footed and got to the other side. And you know, when I finished, all I could think about were the number of people who had so many limitations and were able to do so many things. And I decided, if I can do this, how can I ever say that I can't accomplish the things that they can, because I have all of my abilities. And so that gave me a lot of confidence in myself and hope for the future.
That's a great story. You know, I spent 30 years in corporate, and but I always had this yearning to be an entrepreneur. But prior to doing that, I decided I was going to live out one of my life goals, which was to have a motorcycle and ride it across the country. And so I did. But in doing so, it made me face fears that I hadn't faced before. And it occurred to me I'd become soft, you know, because I was much braver and more confident in my 20s. Of course, you could also say I was dumber, but, you know, if you look closely, you'll see knuckle marks on my face, you know, from running my face into fists. But it was an important lesson for me as we embarked on my first major company, because it was all in. It wasn't stick your toe in. It was deep in the water with significant personal guarantees. And, you know, failure was not an option. Just like on a motorcycle, physics is not your friend. On a motorcycle, you know, it hurts. And, but, you know, you start building up your confidence again. And it sounds like that's what you did. That's such a great story, Walking on Fire and Tony Robbins and those types of things. So how did you become a realtor? What moved you in that direction?
With the last recession, I had carried our company through a very difficult time. We almost lost everything. And I said, I can't let this go south because my boys are too important to me, the future of my family. And so I decided to get my real estate license. And I had divorced my husband in 1986, and I stayed in the business till 1990. And that's a real struggle. And when I got out of the business, I had to have something to get into. Initially, while I'm going through my real estate woes, I learned, I went to work at a mortgage company, and I worked in servicing, and I didn't realize it at the time. I had left a job that I was making $850 a week at the time, and I made $8.50 an hour. And so I was the low man on the totem pole everywhere, and it was kind of hard. But I learned some great lessons because I learned the whole process of what mortgages are all about. I learned the process of taxes, insurance, great things that I would need to know later when I sold real estate. So I got into real estate, and one of the things I'd like to caution you about, but to encourage you over, is don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you don't try, you're not going to know whether you're going to be able to do it or not. And I made my mistakes, but you know something? I didn't make it twice, because once was painful enough and I didn't need to do it again.
You know, of all places, I got inspired by a quote from Jim Carrey, who was quoting his dad. No, just talking about his dad. You know, of all people, who would you get a quote from, right? But he said, you can fail at something you don't like doing either, also. You know, so why not go after what you want? You know, and put your work just as hard at that. And if you fail, well, you could have failed at something else too, but you learned. Yeah, and you built up your confidence, and you met connections. You know, you met other people, and you saw other things. So that really took some perseverance on your part. So what do you do now that brings you the most pleasure in life?
About 2 years ago in August, I retired my real estate license, and I am now handling our own private ownership company that we have some rental properties, and I do that, which is great because it doesn't take up all my time, but the thing I enjoy the most is volunteering. And some people a friend of mine gave me a cup and it says, "Oh no, don't let her volunteer again." But I have always enjoyed being involved in things. And one of the best things that I do is to make good things happen other places. So I belong to the board of the YMCA. I am on a couple of boards for the Cobb County. And I just feel very good about being able to say, part of who I am is how this company's doing or how this organization's going. It gives a lot of satisfaction.
Well, thank you so much, Roseanne. I'm really glad you shared your story. I'm sure a lot of people gained things from that story. And that's, as I've gotten to know the different board members, I thought, you know, for the time and effort they put in, I'd like to give them a few moments for people to get to know them. So let's give Roseanne a round of applause. Turn off the mic.